Welcome to Motivated to Lead podcast, helping you become a better leader. I'm your host, Mark Klingsheim. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for our podcast this week. My name is Mark Klingsheim with SEMA Partners. Each week, we interview leaders and they share lessons learned from their careers. Our goal is to help you become a better leader. We're taking some time this summer to revisit some of our previous conversations that we've had in the last several years. This week, we're going to revisit our conversation with Peter Greer. Peter is the president and CEO of Hope International, a global Christ-centered economic development organization, which serves throughout Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. And he's got some great thoughts to share around some lessons that he's learned as a leader, and looking forward to today's conversation with Peter. It's great to have Peter joining us this week for our conversation. Appreciate you taking time to talk to us.
Thanks, Mark. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess first off, can you give us just a little bit of your story, a little bit of your career history?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a little town outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And my dad was a pastor of a local church. And one of the incredible gifts that I was given as a kid was to go and experience mission trips and to travel. And that was around the U.S., but also some international experiences. And I got hooked. I got hooked on the idea of service. I got hooked on the idea of missions. I got hooked on the idea of trying to show up and make an impact in places around the world. But I really found that my interests were much more in business and entrepreneurship. And it really was in college that came together. I was studying international business in Moscow and had lunch with an individual who said, "Hey, Peter, have you ever heard of this new tool called microfinance?" And talked about someone who had been doing this in Bangladesh and with the Urwego Bank. And I just became fascinated with this idea about using business as a way to invest in communities around the world, not to do what I did, which is go, show up, unpack your suitcase, give a lot of stuff away and then leave, but to actually invest in entrepreneurs, to see businesses grow and to see, a very different model of what it looks like to love your neighbor. So that really was the turning point, and that shaped the direction of my career. So that would have been in 1995. And in some form or another, I've been doing work in this space ever since.
Well, I like to ask this question of almost every guest that we have on. Knowing what you know now, what advice, if you were able to spin back time, would you give a 22-year-old Peter?
Yeah, I think the big thing is to make sure that you are doing everything possible to listen. And I think about my first job in Cambodia, and then I went to Rwanda and then Zimbabwe. But at that stage, the opportunity to get on a moped, to show up in rural communities, to sit down on the floor and to just listen to stories, it completely changed my idea of what poverty was and completely changed the way that I thought about individuals who were born in very different set of circumstances than I was born into, and that commonality. So 22-year-old Peter, I guess it would have been get ready for the joy of listening, the joy of relationships, and whenever possible, be quick to listen and maybe a little slower to speak, and have a whole lot of fun in the journey of listening well. And I'd say that's really been a huge piece about even the journey with Hope International today as well, of how can we really elevate the voices of those people that we serve and make sure that we as an organization are doing a great job listening and learning from those that we're here to serve.
What is the kind of the philosophy about what you do, and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I really appreciate Bob Lupton in his book Toxic Charity. He does a fascinating job, kind of talks about this cycle of giving. And he talks about how the first time you show up and you give someone something, there is gratitude. I can't believe you showed up and you cared. And so you go and you pack your bags and you do it again. And then it's not gratitude, but anticipation. And then you show up a third time and it's expectation. And so there's this cycle that is happening. And then if you keep doing that same model, it leads to entitlement and dependency. And in some ways, communities can actually be harmed by good intentions. And I was so struck. I was in Haiti at one point with a group of Haitian pastors and asking them, hey, what can we do? What helps? And then also as part of that, what are some of the obstacles that you face? And I thought about Haiti, the obstacles of earthquakes and crazy storms and political upheaval and COVID most recently, and all of the challenges that they faced. But the group of pastors were unanimous in what they said. And they said, our biggest challenge is indiscriminate charity from America. They said that is the biggest obstacle because it treats everyone as if they're beggars. And if we're not careful, it disrupts local markets and it causes all of these challenges. And so I think about that, about the good intentions that don't always lead to good results. And so that really is the story of Hope International. We were founded by someone that was doing good work. His name is Jeff Rutt, and going and traveling to Ukraine after the fall of the Soviet Union and helping. And then there was a pastor there who said, your help, it's just not helping anymore. Isn't there a way that you can help us help ourselves? And that worldview change of seeing individuals as active, instead of passive recipients of our charity, seeing them as they are, of active participants in their own communities, in providing for their families. And that change in paradigm, that change in perspective, that changes the programs that we design and the way that we think about helping. And so that's a long way of saying that's really at the core of Hope International. We want to be investors. We want to invest in the dreams of families as we proclaim and live the gospel in the world's underserved communities. That's what we want to be about, not given that short-term aid that is important in a time of crisis, but really focusing on the long-term development.
We have a number of people that listen to this podcast that are first-time leaders, maybe first-time CEOs, whether it's in the corporate world or the nonprofit world. You've written a number of books, and one of the books is focused on the board and the CEO and the importance of CEOs knowing, that the board is there. And talk a little bit about, I know you talked about that it can definitely, that relationship can impact the culture of the organization. And I think most new leaders or CEOs find that that board relationship is important, but sometimes they don't know how to work with the board.
Yeah. If they are having challenges navigating some aspect of the relationship with the board, first thing I would want to say is they are not alone. It is by its very design a complex system where you have multiple people with multiple backgrounds. And especially in the nonprofit space, it is not always clear what your definition of success is. It's not quite as clear as what it might be in a company that is investing in a company and providing a return to shareholders. The definition of success is not quite as clear. So you got lots of dedicated people, you've got driven people, you've got successful people coming together to provide oversight to a leader. And so figuring out, how do we do that? How do we do that well? And I guess the big piece for me is starting with, is there clarity of job description? Does the board know what its job is? And does the leader know what his or her job is? If there's not clarity there, it's going to be a whole lot of challenges that are going to be coming up over the years. So again, that like job description. And then the second piece, when it comes to board CEO relationship, to understand the difference between an individual board member and the collective board. Because if you have a group of individuals that are serving on a board, they are not always going to agree. And if the leader has confusion about, is this the voice of an individual board member, or is this the voice of the board speaking through motions and approvals? Those two things are very different things. And I remember early on, I was just up in knots because I felt like I was getting guidance from different individual board members that I truly could not do all of the things that they were recommending. It was impossible. So just that understanding, again, maybe this is just a subpoint under roles and responsibilities of board and leader, but understanding the difference between the board collective and then the board individual. And then maybe the last thing is, especially for boards, they come together infrequently. The benefit of that is they're not in the weeds. They're not in the day-to-day operations. The challenge of that is perhaps there's not all the context that is necessary when the board gathers. So clear communication, understanding the right frequencies, understanding the right metrics, making sure there's those right patterns of communication. There's a lot that can be clarified if we know who we are, we know our mission, we know what it is, how we function, roles and responsibilities, and we know the metrics and have clear communication of progress. A lot of the other issues, will be taken care of if we have those three components in place.
So, what are some things that you wish you would have known before becoming the CEO of your organization, or thinking back, maybe further another leadership position that you had? What are some things that you should have wish you would have known?
Yeah, I can tell you the best advice that I was given that is something that I wish I had known from day one. It was a number of years in, but I had a conversation with someone who talked about this idea of constellation mentoring. And Mark, I don't know if you've ever seen this or read anything about it. There's a little bit out there, but it's basically this idea that I thought of a mentor as one person that then would teach me all of the things that I need to know. And that person, I came to realize, doesn't exist. There's some people that I really admire how they just get business, they get scaling organizations, but I'm not sure I want to emulate all the aspects of the way that they are involved as a parent or those dynamics. And so it basically breaks up the constellation model and says, identify the areas that you know are your areas that you want to learn and grow, and find a mentor for that particular area. So it gives specificity, it gives clarity. And so I had a list of the 5 areas that I wanted to learn and grow. And I was so enormously fortunate to have 5 individuals that I came and I asked for a 222 request. Would you meet with me for 2 hours, 2 times a year for 2 years? So asking them for 4 meetings over a course of 2 years, they all have turned into lifelong friends. But that was so good because it just allowed me in an area of focus to say, this is an area I know I need to learn. This is an area I know I need to grow, and have someone that I really respect in that particular area to go and wrestle through big issues and eventually become lifelong friends.
Yeah, that's some great advice. So I have watched a number of leaders in our business that have done well, but sometimes they don't always think about who that next leader is going to be behind them. Talk about just kind of your philosophy of succession and just how a leader should be thinking about their role and kind of what the organization will be like even after they leave it.
Mark, this is your area of expertise. I want to flip that question to you. You tell me what I'm missing on this, but I do think about the question of succession planning and how oftentimes it is a topic that is only discussed when there is an imminent succession. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, that is the wrong time to be having the conversation. It is the wrong time. And yet, in many ways, thinking about succession planning, it can feel intimidating. Is this because I'm not doing a good job? What if someone else is identified that could do better? Really, this insecurity that comes out that I think the starting place for healthy succession is, what is the mission of the organization? And does mission matter more than any one leader? And anytime an organization, its rise or its fall, is bound or deeply connected to one individual, you will have an unhealthy organization. There will be no empowerment. There will be no delegation. There will be all kinds of rapids that happen when that inevitable transition happens. So the first point is, start now. Today is the right day to start thinking about succession planning, both internal and external. And just one little habit that we have as an organization is every January, I give the board of directors, the executive committee of the board of directors, a list of 5 names of people that I think would do an excellent job leading Hope International. And then on top of that, we have a short-term and a long-term succession plan document. What happens in the short term if I get hit by the donut truck on the way home? Which sounds, there could be worse ways to go, I guess,
sure.
Than that. But so having that clarity of the short term and then long term. And again, the big piece is just don't be afraid to have the conversation, intentionality around it, and to realize you and I are only interim leaders. Every single one of us today is one day closer to that day when we will transition than we were yesterday. And so we hope it's long term, but we plan as if it was something that actually would happen. So I just love that. Then that thinks about teams, that thinks about investing in people, and it looks at, are there any bottlenecks, things that are overly reliant on one person for branding or messaging or communicating or strategy, and really opening that up to say, let's have a mission that is designed to extend beyond the tenure of any one leader.
Yeah, great. That's so practical, but I don't think we just did some work with an organization, nonprofit organization, that they found that about 39% of their leaders were planning on retiring within 5 years. And most of them, I think it was like over half, did not have a succession plan. And I think that's rampant within the corporate world as well as the nonprofit world, that people aren't thinking that next leader. And that definitely does a disservice to the organization. Talk about your ideas around philosophy of leadership. You've got a senior team that you lead. You report to a board, but talk about that senior leadership team, and what are some of the things that you use as far as to grow that team and to develop them as continue to develop as leaders.
Yeah, and we really do have an amazing team. I'm so thankful for the team we have. Our goal is that when an individual transitions from Hope, that they would be able to say, this is a place that I grew spiritually, personally, socially, materially. They can look at the way that this was a time of growth in all different aspects of who they are, their professional skills, and so much more. And so that's kind of our habit. That's our culture. We want to invest in our leaders. And one of the benefits of that is, if you look at our executive team, many of them started at very different roles and have grown with the organization and have that right attitude, that right aptitude, just super high performers and an incredible work ethic, and seeing the way that they've grown with the organization. So my trust, my gratefulness, my confidence in the leadership team just is exceptionally high. And then what do we actually do? When we think about executive team, we have a global representation as well. So it's not just North America. So we have individuals joining us from certain program leaders around the world that just had a great aspect and dynamic. And we gather together. And when we gather together, part of it is to check in with each other of how we're doing. What's the personal and what's the professional? What's something we're working on? And then we look at the data. What are the dashboards that we look at? What's our individual KPI that we're looking at? And then we have a small number of special topics that we present, the big issues that really move the needle for Hope International, and a limited number where they're presented. Lots of questions are asked, and then thinking through, so what do we do as a result of the conversation that we just had? So again, not anything maybe big or special or unique, but I think it's important to keep growing. And maybe the last piece is, I love, as a team, gathering in person, and we also go and visit other organizations. More than a conference, I find meeting with peer organizations that are further and farther ahead of us in a particular area is the best ongoing education. So we have we're traveling in a few months to South Carolina to meet with another organization that is a little larger than we are and doing some really, really great innovative work. And so we're here to learn together and have those peer-to-peer relationships grow. So maybe that's the other thing that I'd highly recommend. Find those other organizations. That is invaluable learning, as well as a shared experience for an executive team to go through that together.
Yeah, you have a book that you wrote around kind of that what tends to happen within nonprofits can happen in a lot of different is kind of that rival type thing, where you talk about, as far as that you should be rooting on other organizations that are doing great work. Talk a little bit about that philosophy within your organization. And it sounds like you're kind of living that out by sharing information, I'm sure, with other organizations, and they're sharing information with you.
Yeah, so if you look at the nonprofit space, we're not always known for working together really well. And I'd love to see that change. I'd love for us to become our biggest fans and friends in this work. And instead of seeing each other as rivals, to see each other's as other organizations as colleagues in this work. So we did a research methodology similar to what Jim Collins did in Good to Great, of reaching out to industry experts across a variety of different industries and asking for the exemplars, those organizations that really live with an uncommon open-handedness, an uncommon generosity, and just a reputation and practice of collaboration. And so then we had conversations and tried to say, what is it that they think? What is it that they believe? And what is it that they do that allows them to be different from what I know my internal tendency is to hunker down, to just focus internally and to not lift my eyes to see the good work that's happening, and almost in some ways to return to my New England sports loyalties as like, I know my team and we are playing against these other organizations. And that's just not healthy. So the two big questions that we heard again and again that really are upstream from a habit of collaboration is, do we believe in a world of abundance or scarcity, is the first question. And when you believe in a world of scarcity, you can't be generous. You can't be open-handed because you think there's just not enough for us. The converse is true, though. If you believe in a world of abundancy, another organization's growth or success does not come at your expense. It is additive. That is more good that is happening in the world. And then the second question, and we're looking at this specifically for Christian organizations, for faith-based organizations. But the second question really is around this idea of, do you believe that your loyalty is to an organization? Do you believe that that is the extent, or do you believe that there's a mission that extends beyond your mission, that there's actually something bigger and more important happening? And so we talk about, is this about the kingdom, or is it about this, your little club, as a sub component of that? And so I think all of the real exciting work that's happening right now around collective impact, I think there is some exciting work happening where organizations are coming together, finding their area of expertise, and then reaching out and being in partnership with other organizations. I think there is some exciting momentum and acceleration of impact when impact becomes more important than our ego or our logo. That to me is where I get pretty excited about, the possibilities when we no longer see each other as rivals.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Your ego or logo doesn't matter if you're still doing great work. That you should be definitely reading each other on. That's great advice. You've written, how many books is it now? Is it over 12?
Yeah, we have another one coming out in April, so I think the official tally is 14. But that's
14. Okay,
great way of learning. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the new title?
The new book is called The Gift of Disillusionment.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to have you on once that comes out. I'd love to talk through that. So you've written a number of books. Are there other authors or books that you recommend to leaders?
I do love reading, and with my job, I do spend a fair amount of time on planes and trains and have time and space to read and write. But yeah, the three that that I've read recently that I'd recommend all of them. The first is The Common Rule by Justin Earley. And it's grassroots. It is practical about how do we take care of ourselves in the midst of this digital rule. And it looks at some creative practices that were around thousands of years ago to remain rooted and centered, and then gives a twist on what it looks like, the modern piece. So I really enjoy that, The Common Rule. Also really enjoyed reading The Faith-Driven Entrepreneur by Henry Kaestner, and just some great stories and examples of people that are using business for just for good, and just some great case studies about how to maybe think differently about the role, the purpose, and practice of business that maximizes the good. And then the third, I really enjoyed, Terry Looper wrote a book called The Sacred Pace. It's all about decision making, and especially for individuals that are early in their career, looking at big questions. How do I know if I should stay or if I should go? How do I know? And it is a wonderful 5-step process to guide through some of the big decisions. And it can be applied individually, but it also can be applied organizationally with leadership teams as well. So yeah, those are the three that come to mind.
Great. Any favorite quotes that you live by or you refer to often?
Yeah, I on my wall, I had something that was written by Jim Elliot, who was a missionary, and he said, "I am no fool to give what I cannot keep, to gain what I cannot lose." And to me, that quote is so powerful in its ability to refocus on what really matters now. And for me, I believe that this life is not all there is, and what really matters in light of eternity, and to live differently as a result of that. So I just love that reframing, what really matters, and then to live in light of that.
So outside of work, what do you do to recharge? I know you travel a ton. You probably, when you have free time, you probably aren't wanting to get on a plane, but what do you do to recharge?
At this stage, my favorite event, and it's going to happen in just a couple hours. So I am leaving the office and I'm going to go sitting on the sidelines of my daughter's soccer team, cheering her on. So I have 4 kids, ages 10 to 17, and cheering them on in their different sports or activities is the great delight. So my wife and I, that's the place that we love to be, cheering on our kids.
So any parting advice that you would give to a new or upcoming leader?
Yeah, I think the big piece, I think a lot of times there is an element of, I think fear creeps in, fear and it limits options, it limits possibilities. And so I guess the one thought is, I don't know, if we're listening to that the voice of fear is always going to tell us why we couldn't, why we shouldn't, why we're not the right person, why this is not the right idea, why X, Y, and Z could happen. And I would just say maybe pay a little less attention to that voice and a little more attention to the other side of, but what if? What if this works? What if this actually happens? And I think back on my career of how many of the good things, the good breakthroughs, the good innovation, the roles and responsibilities have not been because we listened to fear, but because we said, we don't know. There's uncertainty, there's risk, and let's try it. And so many good things have come from that. So I guess that's the thing is, I think in our world, we need less fear. We need more action. We need more faith. We need more brave leaders who are willing to see problems and not bemoan the problems, but to go about solving them, finding creative ways to positively impact our world. So I don't know, maybe just less fear, more courage as they step out and lead.
Well, I wish you continued success with Hope International and all the work that you're doing, the great work that you're doing in the world. And it's great to sense your wisdom as well as your spirit around leading. And I think this will definitely be helpful for our listeners. How would somebody learn more about your organization as well as the work in your books? How would they find out more?
Yeah. So hopeinternational.org is a place to learn about our mission, our model, our nonprofit organization. So Hope International, all written out one word, .org. And then for the writing or blogging, or if anyone wants to connect with me, peterkgreer.com. That has all the books and all that information. So Peter K, my middle initial, and then Greer.com.
Thanks so much, Peter. This has been a lot of fun. And again, I wish you continued success in all you do.
Thanks, Mark. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for listening to the Motivated to Lead podcast. Please subscribe on iTunes. You can also see a video version of this interview at motivatedtolead.com. This podcast is brought to you by SEMA Partners, helping you find your next great leader.